Good morning. Thank you for choosing to come here on this Saturday morning. Today, there are many events all over Singapore. I think one of the reasons is because the National Library is having their anniversary celebration. So the archive has whole day of activity. So there are no archivists here, I think, and the librarians too. But before I proceed, I want to engage everyone in the morning exercise, the warm up. Don't worry, nothing physical or strenuous. If you check your program, you will realize that I have been given 45 minutes to give this presentation. But after going through the slides, I think it is not enough. So I'm going to have a vote, popular vote. May I have your permission to extend this talk to 60 minutes or even 70 minutes? Please raise your hand as an exercise to show your approval. I'm going to surprise the organizers themselves. They are not aware of this stunt because polling. Because otherwise, you'll be going like motion picture, the thing like a documentary, too fast, the slides. You can't see the details. So thank you for your approval. So I'll proceed with the presentation. Before I start the story today, I will go back to my first visit here in 2018. So that year, in March, then Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean visited Spain, Madrid. So this is a photograph that he took on his Facebook that the museum director in the Madrid Naval Museum presented him a chart from 1778 produced by Spain, Spanish Navy, to him. And he showed it on Facebook. So I was so excited. I'm a map spotter. I go around seeing what map is published in the social media. So I was very excited. So I told Uncle Quek about this. So by the end of that year, November, there was a talk arranged here, facing that direction. The video is online. You can check it out. So interestingly, this is not the beginning. So at that talk, this is the end of the story. But so many years down the road, because it's backlight, I cannot see very clearly. There was a researcher working at the museum at that time. So many years on, he's actually in the audience. You don't identify yourself by answering this. People will know who you are. But yeah, I'm so happy amazed that he's actually here in Singapore today and here in the venue. The other thing is I haven't seen him yet. The other interesting thing is during this talk, because it was arranged very rapidly, within a month's time, I found that the spouse of my primary school classmate was the person that designed and built this building. and he's coming today. He identified himself already, sorry. So I hope it's the same building, right? Correct building, great. Yeah, so this to me is highly amazing. I don't have the vocabulary to express my amazement. This coincidence of not one, but two people that somehow is related to this presentation here at this venue. Okay, carry on. Please focus on the yellow dot, if you can see yellow dot. This is 1966 map of Singapore, the old coastline. 1983 hydrographic chart. The airport is being reclaimed, the yellow dot. See, 2018, that's where we are now. It's land now, at that time it's water. So I was also very amazed when I was preparing the slide for the 2018 talk. So I just reprised this section. So you see, this is the combination, but because of light, you may not see the overlay of the land and the sea together. So this is the thing. We are 5.4 kilometers from the original coastline, Mata Ikan village. That's where the government used to have a chalet and bungalow. Civil servants can rent the place and enjoy the sea view. So now the sea has been extended so far. You can see the sea also, but fascinating to me. 5.4 kilometers, very far away. Okay, now we come to the presentation proper. Since I've been given the extension, so I'll go slightly slower. As you can see, there are some grey out topics. Sadly, because I over-prepared in June, during these last 6 years, because of the advent of COVID, in order to protect my parents, I didn't come out. I stayed at home for almost 5 years. So my last public talk was in 2023, February. And so for 2.5 years or so, I was not active. So in June, I was invited to the library, quite surprisingly. And I realized that I've lost the power to gauge time. I knew that 53 slides cannot be finished in half an hour, but I still put it in. It's like, let it happen and see how it goes. Of course, this is just wishful thinking. So of course, the moderator had to stop me halfway. So this time around, same thing happened. So I say I still have to calibrate this control, self-control and discipline. Same thing, 170 slides. So cannot, right? Of course, Uncle Quack was not pleased. The word is not pleased. So I have to resort to popular vote. Yes, to counter management. Learn this trick. Now this today we learn this. Yeah. So unfortunately, the topics that have been grayed out were the ones that have been sort of like shelved. Everything has been prepared already. So I can, at the drop of a hat, I can prepare everything, but of course no time. So I have arranged this talk originally in four major sections, just like National Day Parade. You know, they have different chapters and all these things. Similar concept borrowed from that kind of show. So in the first section is establishing Singapore. More of establishing the realm, the area of operation for the maritime industry and people's livelihood, where Singapore is moving around. Singapore, people residing in Singapore moves around. And the size and shapes of certain islands and coastline where Singapore is related. So that's the establishing Singapore part. Then the second part is fighting for Singapore. I jump ahead 1 century because I want to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. And of course, the war provides a lot of opportunity for the charting industry, unfortunately, but that's the case. Huge demands, many types of charts were produced, but I've originally chosen 3. One from the German Navy. This is a new discovery and a new delivery. It was taken out originally, but it was added in because it was in the trailer. So number 2 is the Japanese chart. This one is significant, later on I'll tell you why. And the third one was originally a UK chart map. It's a combination of land map and sea chart together for the liberation of Singapore. That story was actually told in 2018, so I thought I can leave it up because this is a new perspective on the same story. So World War II 80th anniversary to commemorate the thing. Then we come to Republic of Singapore, the formation of Singapore as a sovereign independent country. So same thing, very few maps and charts. Singapore have no charts or maps published in 1965, the year we got full independence. So there is one from Germany. But because it is not as significant as the other story, so I leave it out for now. And the story chosen is the first chart by the Port of Singapore Authority, published in 1975, exactly 50 years ago this year. So MPA, the successor organization, is not doing any commemoration because it's just a routine work. So, and they're too busy to engage in this sort of commemoration. So I thought as a private person and enthusiast, I would commemorate this event. The 50th anniversary of Singapore, Republic of Singapore's own chart production, 50 years. So the other one, number 10, is significant, but again, the story is too long, unfortunately, for this session. So finally, renewing Singapore. Singapore kept renewing itself, so I use the word renew, refreshing and so on. So the first one is the dual batch chart. This marks the return of the UK Hydrographic Service back to this area. I have one a real printed chart over there. So if you're interested later on, you can take a look at some of the design differences and the coloration. The most obvious is the color difference between the UK production specs and the MPA's production specs. So the story chosen is the final one, number 12, MPA, the descendant of PSA, charts in 2025. This is to mark SG60, our 60th anniversary of independence of Singapore. So the 2 charts, the 2 current edition charts are there on the table also. So you can see the difference now. And then these charts are slightly different from the previous charts. And finally, at CODA, the end, I will show a brief image of the satellite showing the waters of Singapore to see how busy Singapore water is. Because the chart don't show how busy the water is. You only show the interesting areas, anchorages and certain navigation aids. Okay, so we will now proceed to the story proper. Establishing Singapore. The first charts in 1819 and 1820. So the British East India Company came to Singapore, as we know, February 6, 1819. That's where Raffles, representing the British East India Company, signed a treaty with the Temenggung, local chieftain, over this right to establish a factory, actually a trading post. The factory is not things that you are produced. The factory is a trading post. The other one, the place where things are produced is called a manufactory. It's a long-winded word, manufactory. A factory is a trading post. So this is the chart published in the newspaper, Calcutta Journal. So this chart in the, never mind, just a minute. Never mind, I will use I will just use the laser pointer to point. If you can see the dot, can you see the dot? Hello? Can you see the dot? Anyone? Yeah, you can see the dot. Otherwise, I'll change the thing. This chart here is St. John's Island. So Raffles and his fleet arrived off St. John's Island on the 28th of January, 1819. So on the same day, he landed in Singapore over here, the village over here, Singapore River mouth area. And on the 30th of January, he ordered 2 of his surveyor ships to start surveying this area. So they started surveying the area in 2 days after they arrived in Singapore. So they finished the survey on the 4th of February, a few days. They finished the survey. So the 5th of February, so it's a sequence of events, very fast events. So he got the so-called manuscript, the drawing out. So on the 6th, as you know, they signed the thing. So there's actually an interesting background to why they signed on the 6th. Because he was actually doing a secret survey of Singapore Harbour at that time. So on the 7th, immediately next morning, the survey ships left Singapore for Malacca, up north. Because at that time, the British already established Malacca and Penang. Only Singapore was the new one. So that's the background to this chart, and was published in the newspaper Calcutta Journal on the 5th of April. So a lot of sources cite the 1st of May. 1st of May is a reprint of the 5th of April. So you see how fast the newspaper worked. So this newspaper was founded only in October 1818, only a few months before February 1819. So they are very keen to increase their viewership. So later on, we'll see what happened to it. So, okay, so you see, February 1890, plan of Singapore Harbour. Look at the spelling of Singapore Harbour. Previously, Singapore is spelled variously, especially the car part got K-A or C-A, and the pour part got P-O-U-R, and so on. But this is the first time the name we use today, the spelling we use today, was published, Singapore. So this chart has another significance, that the name, the English anglicized name of Singapore is this spelling, and it was published in this chart. So you see, drawn and engraved especially for the Calcutta Journal. So this is the publisher's name. And before I go into this, please focus on this area. This is the island of Goa, which is Sentosa, and this is Brani. And here is something called Channel for Native Boats, and this is the mainland of Singapore. So this is the blown up. This is Sentosa area, Brani, and then this is the Tanjong Pagar area. So Channel for Native Boats. Remember this. So this one, now I move to the next one, 1820. So that was a newspaper, Private Affairs. The East India Company, official chart, 1820, they published this. So you see this quite sparse, not as dense as the newspaper chart. So same thing with 1819, same spelling of Singapore, Captain Daniel Ross with the old way of writing the S, big S. So you see, it's Honorable East India Company, 1st January 1820. So many months later that they published this chart. So I'm going to show the Singapore site. The Singapore is quite sparse, not much detail as compared to the Singapore area here, and the Malay village of Singapura. This one is still the old, another variant of Singapore's name. And this is the Bras Basah Canal, the one now, Stamford Canal now. I covered Raffles City outside there, you can see. This is Tanjong Ru and so on. So it's quite simple, the official chart. So now I put them side by side to see the lack of details on there between the two official version and the private version. First of all is the extent. The public, the private version, the newspaper edition has the Johor Shore, this part, actually outside here, this area that we are actually sitting here. So the official one just crop off at the east coast of Singapore, over here, just crop off. So without the further extent. So it did not show the entry to the Johor River. So for this one, I want to stress on this part here. As I say, here quite crowded, and especially the channel for native boats. In the official chart, that was erased. So that Farquhar or Farquhar in Scottish can claim credit for discovering New Harbour. Yeah, so in the history book, they say, he discovered New Harbour. But the surveyor already noted there's a channel for native boats, right? It's just unnamed only, but it's already there. There's a channel, so there's no discovery. It's just merely named by Farquhar as New Harbour. So this is the untold story on this chart. Okay, so I forgot to say the story about the outcome of Calcutta Journal. So because of their way of raising readership, in in April of 1823, the editor and founder was banished from India from their publishing all these interesting stories and the criticism of the East India Company directorship. By November, the newspaper was closed down. So 18 October to November 1823, short-lived paper. But fortunately, they lived to report and produce this informative and interesting map as compared to the official version. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known some of the details, especially some of the Malay villages on the Bugis side. Okay, next we move on to the first Kelong chart. I call it first Kelong. So one of the focus is on Kelong, the fishing traps or fish sticks. This was something new. After Singapore was founded, then it moved to Singapore. So this is the 1827 survey of Singapore Harbour by the same person, Captain Daniel Ross. So since 1819, after they did the chart, they left. East India Company surveyors left. They did not come back for surveys, proper surveys of the sea until 1827. I'll talk about the significance of the dig. So one of the things is that originally the chart was just this Singapore area. It's some of the eastern side of Sentosa and Brani in this area. So this one extended to the western side, including all the southern islands, and this one, Cyrene Reef at that time. So that's the expanded scope of this chart in 1827. So you can see the 1827 Singapore same harbors and routes and adjacent channels. From the surveys of Captain Daniel Ross of the Bombay Marine, 1827. Bombay Marine was the name of the naval forces for the East India Company. After all, it's a private company. So they used naval Bombay Marines rather than the Navy. But it was renamed Indian Navy, and it's the predecessor of the current Indian Navy. So it has many name changes and so on. So it's a complicated history. So here, the wordings are not very clear, but it is published by the Hydrographic Office of the Admiralty, September 21st, 1840. So it's 13 years after the survey that this chart was published. So long. At that time, probably nothing much has changed over Singapore or the waters in this area, or they need that not very important. So they allow this lapse of 13 years. In fact, it's not quite uncommon. Even our modern day maps have this kind of frequency in updating. So here, okay, before I move on, talk about the fishing sticks. This is the Tanjong Pagar, Teluk Air over here. Tanjong Pagar, this is Brani. So this is the Keppel Harbour, or the new harbour at that time. So here, off Teluk Air and Tanjong Pagar area is the fish sticks. Outer fishing sticks. The G is actually here, fishing sticks. See this symbol? This symbol is still used today on the hydrographic charts. So they have been using it for so many years, more than close to 2 centuries, this symbol. So this is the first recording of fishing charts in this part of water. According to written history, 1 year after the founding of Singapore, someone from Malacca brought this technique, Kelong, to Singapore and set up Kelongs over here. And they improved the catch. So the story about Singapore being a fishing village and so on actually dates quite further back, as early as the founding of Singapore. But the technology changed within the year. There were a few changes until the Kelong come, and then it really increased the volume of catch in Singapore waters. And Kelong is still in Singapore. Unfortunately, the news, if you read the news, there's one Kelong, E36, off Pulau Ubin, is being demolished end of August. There are too many current affairs, so cannot put in everything. But just to let you know that there's one surviving Kelong that has been demolished. So I think there are 3 left in Singapore. So at the peak in 1950, according to the write-up, there were about 300 Kelongs in Singapore. So all along the coast of Singapore was scattered with Kelongs. So in 1965, the government stopped issuing licenses for Kelongs. So in this chart, I want to highlight the other thing called Cyrene Reefs. So over the many years, over 20 years, a lot of people have speculated on how this name came about. Of course, this is my own guess and speculation, more according to the hydrographic history, surveying history. That means a ship is named after a ship. A lot of stories say, this is, they cite biblical sources and so on about the name Cyrene and so on. I don't think that's the thing far out. So Cyrene Reef is the other one. So come back to the chart itself. So the production date of the chart, the first thing to note, the curious 13-year lapse. Because the surveyors, 1827, actually they were involved in this thing called the First Anglo-Burmese War. This is the English name. From 1824 to 1826. So after this war was over, the warships, the Royal Navy warships and the East India Company gunships were actually sent to Singapore for one of the things called anti-piracy operations. This thing is still going in Singapore today. So this is very old, this problem. So the second thing is, why was the chart produced in 1840? This is my personal speculation. The first one is the fact that they were sent to Singapore after the war was over. The second one is, why was it in 1840? Because of the first Opium War fought in China. The Padang in Singapore was actually used as an assembly area for the forces gathering from India and direct from UK before moving on to China to fight. So that was one of the, I think, points that there's a committee trying to apply for the United Nations intangible heritage, like the Botanic Gardens, that kind of thing. One of the uses of Padang with international implication was that the forces were gathered here, the Opium War. So that's I think one of the reasons that 1840 is the time of the peak of operation, Royal Navy operations in the Opium War, that they started to publish chart of Singapore. Because they've been shelled for so many years, suddenly there's a need of Singapore water charts. And then of course the anti-piracy operations, the ships involved in the survey in this period. So now I come to the Kelong. So this is actually from, I just accessed it 3 days ago, the Fisheries Act, Singapore's law, statutes online. So you see the word fishing sticks. They don't use Kelong, this is a non-extended name. So it means any device used for the capture of fish, which is made up of poles or other supports permanently fixed into the ground and enclosed by rami, rattan, wire, and other screening material, so on, to lead fish into the enclosures, or any device using a net or other screening material that is anchored permanently or impermanently. So this is the wordy description of a Kelong type establishment. So this is in our law now, still current. Fishing sticks. So you remember the name, fishing sticks, in 1827 chart. We are still using it in our current law today. So this is an air photo of a typical Kelong off Tanjong Ru. This is the Kallang Airport. You still see the runway here. This is Tanjong Ru. All the rich man bungalows are here. All the paga, all the swimming pool. And the Kelong is just very near. This is to show, to scale the relative size and the length, how long this trap is to mislead and guide the fish and go into the trap. So you see how long it is, very long. Near shore, near the shoreline, all the way up here. So the fish will be guided along this structure and then into this trap, the V-shaped thing. So the fish is trapped inside here, so the Kelong. There are several designs in a way and got different names. And this is a low oblique, all of the same Kelong, taken from a different angle. So you can see the paga here. I think this is some rich man's bungalow at that time. And this is the Kelong over here, taken by the Royal Air Force. So next we move on to Cyrene Reef. That's the name that has been puzzling some Singaporeans for some years. So this is a newspaper from 1848, quite late, but it shows that the Malays call it Pulau Pandan, Pandan River, the Pandan, and the English call it Cyrene Shore at that time. They were recording some place names. So the trees have all disappeared, they say, but aged natives say there were many trees on the reef in former times. Hence the Malay call it a pulau or island. So probably due to maybe environmental changes or something, that all the trees were lost and become like a barren reef or shore. Got different definition today. Yeah, but there were trees on top of this island. Oops, before I forget. I put in this second part, New Harbour in Silat. Especially in Chinese waters, we use the word Silat as a direct translation for the name Silat. But a lot of people say, it's the Strait of Singapore, this main strait. That's why Singapore is called Silat. But according to this, it's actually the small strait, the New Harbour Strait, the Keppel Harbour Strait, that is actually referring to the Silat of Singapore. So especially Chinese, they have Lat Pao, which is the Silat, newspaper of Silat. So the term becomes synonymous with Singapore, especially in the Chinese language. So this is an interesting thing that I saw, that it's actually the New Harbour, which is the channel for native boats. Okay. So this one, we come to the newspaper from 1827, one of the earliest newspaper we can get in Singapore currently, from National Library. This is actually a correspondence on the topic of piracy. So someone wrote in to say that you can entice the pirate praus, the ships. And Captain Campbell of HMS Cyrene He actually disguised two of his boats to resemble trading praus. So they have to resort to this trickery to fight the pirates. So the Siren was actually here from December 1826, right after the end of the Burmese War, to Singapore, until they left Singapore for India in 1828 for his final disposal in Bombay. So now we look at the ship itself, rare pictures and drawings. This is the ship is part of a 16-ship class called Cyrus class sloop, I think. Yeah, so this is one of the drawings for a typical of this class. The captain's name is Commander Alexander Campbell, Royal Navy, and he was 1814 was launched. It was completed in 1818, and it was sold in 1828, and it was broken up after selling. So this is a painting of one of her sister ships, HMS Medina of Malta, 1822. So it's contemporary with the Siren in Singapore at that time. It's a gunship. And this is another of her sister ships, HMS Esk. This painting was done after the ship was sold as a private whaler, renamed Matilda to Australia, hence the name Matilda. But at that time, the painting still looked side by side, quite similar, the two ships. So these are both sister ships of Siren. There's no actual painting of Siren itself, so I have to use a substitute from sister ships. At least there are two that have this kind of profile. You can look at the ships, similar looking at the same. That's how it looked like, Siren. So that's what I think it is. And when Daniel Ross, the surveyor, and the Siren were in town, this newspaper from 1827 in June. So both ships arrived in it's 1827. Both ships arrived in Singapore, the port of Singapore, June 11th. Daniel Ross, investigator from Penang, and here, Siren, Alexander Campbell on Siren from a cruise. A cruise, that means probably go out and patrol for pirates. They don't say the details. Whenever they go on the cruise, they are on some type of secret operations, if you see it on a newspaper. Then when they left, a few days later, on the 23rd, Siren left for Malacca and Penang, and then 2 days later, investigator also left for Malacca. So this is the period where the two ships are here, both in Singapore. Although both were here on and off, and especially Siren, the whole year they were here, until they went off to India in 1828. So next, the third chart. The first locally surveyed chart. Pay attention to this. Have a good look at this chart. The significance is that it anticipated, or he realized at the time when he did this chart in 1846, that this is the how should I say, the full extent of Singapore Strait and the important areas of the Singapore Strait, the full extent. Today, later on you can see the chart. The current MPA chart also covers this extent of the Singapore Strait, where Singapore Strait starts and where Singapore Straits end. So later on I'll talk about the detail, just to show you the overview first. So the survey of the Straits of Singapore, this Straits and Strait got a lot of argument with editors. Some editors, they say, how come you put an S to Strait? Some editors, how come there's no S? So sometimes the writer got problem. But there's no definitive answer. The different period, people use S and no S. So depending on the age of the editor. Yeah. So for this, it's respectfully inscribed to the Honorable Colonel Butterworth. He was the governor of the Strait Settlement at the time. So all the other words I'll bring up the next slide. It's just to zoom in. So the two people involved were Samuel Congalton, commander of Honorable Company Steamer Diana. The ship's name and we have RSS, the kind of name, HMS, all these things. So the East India Company's ships are used. They use the name HCS, Honorable Company's Steamer. Usually it's HCS. And government surveyor of Singapore at the time, John Turnbull Thompson. So both of them, he was the surveyor and he operated the vessel going around. Later on, we'll talk about Diana. So the year of the publication was 1846. The survey was done in 1845. And for those who know this date, it was published in August 17, 1846. Very good day, significant day, National Day of Indonesia. So additions is to 1855. So Thompson renewed and revised the chart in 1855. So again, come back to this chart to show the significant points. So the chart is too big. It's quite big. It was on display. The real chart was on display some years ago before COVID at the National Library. Two halves. It is divided here along Tekong. You see the dividing line here. So Tekong is on the eastern side, eastern sheet, and then Singapore Island is on the western sheet. And we see these three key points which mark the beginning, the southern edge, and the eastern end of Singapore Strait, or the eastern approach. So Pulau Pisang, MPA now has a lighthouse on it. So this hydrographic chart is not a representation of sovereignty. It's more of the safety. So there's a lighthouse there, and then there's a lighthouse at Raffles Light, and the lighthouse at Horsburgh. So I think during every year, Singapore Maritime Week in April, we can now ballot to go to Raffles Lighthouse and have a look. Yeah. So I was in one of the guinea pig batches before they start having this as a regular thing to go there and take a look. So it's quite interesting to see this extent that Thomson has depicted, and was followed subsequently by all the subsequent surveyors and charts. So now look at some of the things. So Tekong, interesting. In this chart, Tekong's shape and size has been finally determined. So this chart has a significance in that that's why I used the title, the heading called Establishing Singapore. Every part of Singapore has been established. The actual size, shape, and the position. No more squeezing of the west coast and funny accommodations are made to the inaccuracies in the chart. Everything has been sort of like determined by this chart. So this is the actual size and shape of Pulau Tekong, and it's depicted in this particular chart by Thomson. So next we look at the three other points, the red ones. Okay.
Mr. Mok has been talking for a long time. Time to take a break.
Need a break,
Yeah, have a drink.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Just now I noticed that a lot of you all were taking pictures here and everywhere. So don't worry, all his maps are loaded into the website of the registration. Take your time. So take your time, listen to him.
Don't have my handsome face.
Take your time, listen to him. All the things are in the website. Okay.
Thank you for the water. Here, so this is Pulau Pisang, and marking the western approach to Singapore Strait. So that eventually there's a lighthouse there. It's not about sovereignty and stress again. It's just for operational safety. This one is Raffles Lighthouse. So it marks the southern extent or the northern boundary of Singapore Strait. This one, Raffles Light. So this was all actually written, a lot of discussion at the time, where to site the lighthouse, which is more preferred and so on. So this one was the first to be built, Horsburgh Lighthouse. So this one had a long international court affair until it was finally settled in 2008. So you see Middle Rocks over here and then South Lake over here. Yeah, all these issues. Horsburgh Lighthouse, some rocks over here. You see rocks over here. All these characteristics of the light. So these are the three main points that define Singapore Strait. So this is the eastern one, the southern, and the western. So now we come to the ship, HCS, Honorable Company Steamer, Diana. So this is actually from the Wikipedia, one of the rare paintings that shows the ship over there. So they blew up. So you can see that it's actually a steamer, a paddle. And in those days, this particular ship was used as in the Burmese campaign as a transport. You can see soldiers being transported for goods and equipment, as well as for the soldiers. And the other important thing is for gunship operations, riverine operations. Like in Vietnam War, the ships go around the shores of River Mekong, and then they fire at the land targets. So they were doing the same thing in Burma. And of course, at that time, during wartime, they were not doing that. So after Burmese War, the ship was transferred to the Burmese government. And in 1837, the Straits Settlement government bought it from the Burmese government and used it specifically for the anti-piracy over this Malacca Strait area. So Samuel Congleton was the captain in charge. Actually, he declined promotion for a bigger command. He wants to command this particular vessel. And in 1845, right after the survey of the Singapore Strait, the ship was sold off to private owners, and a new gunship was commissioned for Congleton to command. So that's the Diana, the ship itself. So again, the piracy is actually a long-standing problem over this part of the world. So this is the thing. I have to include this Information Fusion Center. I think it's quite close to this venue, right? This is from their website. It's just to show that the problem is not new. It's an old problem. And this is the Republic of Singapore Navy contingent in the center. Just to show, I do not know them, so just to show the awareness that such things exist in Singapore. So the important thing is this about IFC, so the text part. So it was established in 2009, and it's a maritime security purpose, and then hosted by the Republic of Singapore Navy at the Changi Command and Control Center. So it must be somewhere in this area. And okay, the last part caught my attention now, because this is the mission, piracy, sea robbery, terrorism, contraband smuggling, illegal fishing. And then this last part caught my attention, irregular human migration. Wow, this is complicated words. Must be some legalese. But it reminded me of this. So this is actually an addition to what I've already finished. It reminded me of this. Anti-slavery operations, that was the old term they used. So irregular human smuggling operations movement. In 1833, the British Parliament passed this Slavery Abolition Act. So, and it came into effect in 1834. So after that date, the Royal Navy go around and stop people from slavery. They check the ship. Why are you carrying all these people? Not of your race, not of your kampong, and not of your territory. And they actually check the thing. And then they rescue all these people. And they actually compensate the slave owners at that time. But however, East India Company were exempted from this act until 1843. So by the time the Diana came to Singapore, or nearing his operation, he was also going around Malacca, because the Sultan of this area, they still continue practicing that sort of thing. They actually, like POWs, all these, they make them as slaves, enslave them. So the Royal Navy and all these gunships go around doing this, checking here and there. And this particular operation is not well, how should I say, known or recorded. If you read the ship's own account, the captain's biography or their memoirs, you will see them engaged in these anti-slavery operations, but not in the general history books. You rarely see them mentioned. But it's interesting when I see the IFC's roles and missions, they have this still renamed in a way. So in the olden days, it was this anti-slavery operations. So next we move to the next major event, fighting for Singapore, World War II. This is I'm very excited about this. Originally, I removed it with much regret. So Uncle Kwek said, hey, cannot. This was advertised, must put back. So it was put back. So it was 1941, this edition. They started producing Singapore charts 1939, the year they started the war, Germany. 1939, they start to produce the chart, this chart. 1940, the update, and this is the 41 new edition. You'll see the publication date. So for those who are familiar with British chart, this is actually a copy of chart 2403. Today is Saturday. There are a lot of 4Ds in this kind of chart numbers. Yeah, later on you'll see all the chart number over there. Yeah, but I'm not promoting this. It was just a coincidence that the British chart system used 4 digits. Yeah, this is a German chart. So interestingly, 2403 just cut off at Pulau Pisang. Pulau Pisang is outside here. Kukup is here. So it's not quite complete. Later on, you'll see the original thing. So we have, Horsborough is here, same thing, Raffles Light is here. So you see all these, from the back, you see a lot of grayish things here. These are all numbers, the depth of the water. So very complicated to read. So the navigators have to learn how to read and interpret all this. They make sense of all these things. So it's quite a challenge. So this is the German chart. I tried to look for this for close to 15 years. So about 10 years ago, I learned of a place finally that there is a chart. But for the last 10 years, since the 70th anniversary of World War II, I was afraid of rejection. Just in case I write to them, they say no such thing. I don't want to help you. So I was really fearful of it until this year, 80th anniversary, says, never mind, I just tried. I wrote to them. Oh my goodness, I was surprised by their generosity and their helpfulness. So within the last month, in August, during the National Day month, ding dong, email. So they get the library staff to pull these charts out from storage, scan it in high resolution to my specs, and then deliver it to me. So finally I can show it. So it's a very new sort of like addition to my chart collection. And it took so many years. And it started with a friend who was working in a company that engaged a German consultant that had access to this 2012. So it's a long story, but it's interesting. It's the story leads to you never know why you met someone in life. Until many years later, you realize, she's here to help me find this chart. Yeah, so that's interesting. So this is the view of the chart. It looks almost identical to the British equivalent. But because of time, so that part has been removed from this. So you see the title page, the title is here. Each chart has a title over here. So very big. So this is the title. So you see this, this one is very sensitive. So it was not shown on the website. Otherwise, the website could be banned by some countries, especially someone. And this one is the stem, a chop, the unit chop. And then the previous chop, previous library chop. So the translation is this. This is Google. Don't know whether accurate or not. So the words are this. And the top is East Indian Archipelago. Then the main title is Singapore Strait. And the scale at this latitude is 120,000. So the heights and depths are in meters. So many countries, besides the UK, have adopted the metric system since the 19th century, the previous century before World War II. So all these are things. So this is critical. If you get captured a German chart, don't misinterpret it as phantoms and feet. My goodness, then you will run aground everywhere before moving. So this is meters. So this thing happened to Mars Explorer. The US scientists misinterpret these imperial units with metric. The thing crashed. Controlled flight into terrain, right? I think that's the word for aviation. Yeah, sad. So these are some of the stems and chops on the chart for more information, the interesting information. So at the bottom is this, all these words. All these are the date, the year, the day, and the month, the format. So European countries use Roman numerals for months and the day. So you can see here, there's this 8. This is 85111, 828, the date here. And here, the final minor correction was this, 14th of August, 1941. And then this big red warning, got this exclamation mark, must be some kind of warning. So the translation is this, minor corrections. And then here is archive item not for loan. So this is actually a library copy. So usually for landmines, you see Actung, attention. If you watch a lot of World War II film, Actung. This is not Actung, it's just this a new phrase. So at the bottom also have this one. This is the one that is the key marker, new edition. So a lot of minor correction. So after a while, they will issue a new issue. This is how chart sort of like production cycle goes. So this is actually one of the new issues in August of 1941. This is the last thing. Sorry, I underlined the thing. So the last stem is interesting. That this chart, actually the word is chart. Google say map. The chart will not be corrected from the 1st of January 1942 until further notice. And that's interesting. There were no more archival copies of this chart. The next one is the 19-something, post-war already. So at that time, 1941, you know what happened in 1941? So the Germans also knew what is going to happen before 1942 starts. Yeah, from this sort of thing. Because after 1942, we are here already. Why bother with these charts? We are here. The Germans were here with the Japanese. Okay, this one also. So you now see what the axis the Germans and the Japanese were doing. I have to put in this chart. This was my priority in trying to delete maps. This is a chart of Singapore obtained from a Japanese Navy interpreter at Rabaul in the Pacific, Solomon Islands. That side, Rabaul is New Britain, now part of Papua New Guinea, in March 1946, and it's in the Australian War Memorial. They are not very keen on this map. That's that when I saw it, it's quite significant because of the place and the timing. So I put this chart here because today is the 6th of September. Yesterday was the 5th of September. What's the significance of the 5th of September? That's Liberation Day for Singapore. The British forces returned to Singapore on the 5th of September. The 5th Indian Division landed back in Singapore, marking the return of the British forces. And of course, the Union flag back to Singapore. But Singapore don't talk about it. So that's why, luckily for Quack and everyone, I had the chance to say it here to the audience in Singapore, on Singapore soil. And interestingly, the next day, the other day, okay, I'll go back. 2nd of September is when the Tokyo Bay surrender formally signed. Japanese officially surrendered. Hence, 10 minutes. I've got permission to extend for another 20 minutes. So 2nd of September, they signed the thing. So the 3rd of September, you see China have this mass display, right? So right after the surrender, Allied forces start to sort of accept the surrender. The Japanese start to return the various places. So from the north, you start to see come down. So the 5th the forces waiting in the Singapore Straits landed. They were actually standing by for the order to land. So the 5th of September, they landed and they took over Singapore. So on the 6th is Rabaul's turn. Australian forces took the surrender of the Japanese forces on the 6th, this today's date, exactly 80 years ago. Rabaul was taken back by Australian forces because it was part of the protectorate, Australian protectorate. So again, this is the title, and you see the word me is in meters. So they are very careful about this. They stress this thing up there, that this is in meters, it's not in feet, because the original is in feet, British chart. So it's printed in Showa 14, 1939, the year World War II is going to start. And this is the title, Japanese title. So the translation, Singapore Strait, Western Johor Strait. It's just the series and the specific ship title, and Triton Shore to Kranji River. It's the same as the title here, the original English title, almost similar, quite exact translation. So this is the area that the Japanese landed during World War II. So Japanese were already having detailed chart of this area in 1939. So the interesting part about this chart is the stem. There's a chop outside the cover of this Japanese chart at the lower left corner. The chop here, these words, is the 21st Air Flotilla of the Japanese Navy. And in one of the air groups, so the Japanese, the air group, like the groups that support their Navy forces. So this is the 11th Air Fleet. The higher command is 11th Air Fleet. They were, I think, 15th Air Fleets or something. So 11th Air Fleet then has the 21st, 22nd, 23rd Air Flotilla. And then in this flotilla, there were 3 air groups. So one of the air groups was Kanoya Air Group. It was originally based in Taiwan, sent to Saigon. And because they were the most experienced in torpedo bombing, they were assigned to support Malayan campaign with the task of sinking Repulse and Prince of Wales. So eventually they accomplished their assigned mission. They put the killing torpedoes to both battleships. So that's the significance of this stem, this chop on this chart. This is owned by someone from the unit that actually sank these 2 ships. Yeah, so the bomber was this, the Betty bomber. So they were the most experienced, so they were assigned this task. They actually transferred from another unit just to join this campaign. So the unit, interestingly, after the campaign here, moved east, slowly. So by 43, they were in Rabaul, and they actually was disbanded. So it's interesting that this soldier faithfully kept this chart all the way until 1946 and gave it to the Australian captors. So must actually write a commendation to this soldier, actually. But of course, they are the losers, nobody bothered. So this is the comparison. So this is BA chart again, another 4-digit, 2587, 1958 edition. This chart was originally, when Singapore's building a Navy base, the Royal Navy start to survey this area, and they have this chart, and it's called a fleet use only chart. That means it's not given a 4-digit number or 3-digit number, any chart number. It's only for local fleet use. So subsequently, by 1926, the Japanese copied this 26th edition, and they were giving this number. And this is, you see, compare, it's almost the same, except that they have all the island groups here. The Jurong Island group completed. So they actually make it, north-south extent is much more. Okay, so this is the original British chart title. So the only difference is here, from Triton Shore to Southern Shore, slightly southern part of this same area. That's all. Okay, now this German New Guinea. German New Guinea is where the New Britain is, the Bismarck Archipelago. So Rabaul is interesting because it was in that area, and you see this 1942 American paper say, Rabaul, key to Japan's offense and defense in Pacific. So it's a very important area. So see the area, Rabaul, this island. New Britain, the island is. So that time, before the war, it had become sort of like British, it's Australian sort of a protectorate. So because of the landscape and the area, it's very difficult to take over the place. So the Allies decided to keep it as an enclave. Let the Japanese strike that, a pocket of Japanese like that. So they did all these things to control their activity, but never bothered to take over the place. So the Japanese can live there on their own until the war is over. As you watch there's a HBO series, Pacific 2010, episode 4 depicts operation on this New Britain. It was somewhere here, Cape Gloucestershire. So the Allied forces only fight on the western part. They did not bother, or they did not want to bother to disturb the Japanese stronghold on the eastern part of Rabaul. So Rabaul just continued to be held by the Japanese. So this is the, the tip there. It actually has a nice bay. Rabaul is here. So this area. So this is a 1944 army map, topo map of the same bay, Simpson Harbor. And here you see, military forces like to take this kind of thing. Aerodrome, airfield, airdrome, we call it. The American call it airdrome. But eventually, the Allied decided against launching an operation to do all this. Not worth the manpower and the time. So they moved up. So they kept them in check. So Rabaul is there. As you can see, Singapore is here. Rabaul is there. And this is Papua New Guinea, now part of Papua New Guinea. Seems quite far. The distance is 5,475 kilometers. That's 1,000 times the distance here from the old coastline of Singapore Island. 1,000 times. So this looks very far, right? However, interestingly enough, Papua New Guinea is very keen on joining ASEAN. Singapore is a founder nation, 1967. So they become observers since 76 in this country. But of course, Indonesia is the only one that is supportive, especially Singapore, Malaysia, and Brunei, not supportive. So they are still observers. So after I learned about this, I feel that, Rabaul not so far away already. ASEAN thing, they actually, during our summit and meeting, they're actually sitting there observing. So this is an interesting thing. So now we come to the part of Singapore, the last two. First, local chart by PSA. Before I talk about the chart, there's a history. After independence, we have the British Army land area, about 10%. However, nobody talk about the sea. You see, Singapore takes over territorial waters. Few people talk about it. Britannia ends the rule of these waves. Actually, the naval jurisdiction extends eastward as far as Johor Shore Bay. Johor Shore is just somewhere here. And then to the westward side, to Pulau Sarimbun off the Lim Chu Kang coast. So this is rarely talked about and very difficult to find references and especially maps of this particular thing. British Admiralty waters actually of Singapore. So we did not get it back until 1st of November 1971. There was this act, this is the current statutes of Singapore. Admiralty Waters Repeal Bill. So finally, it came into effect on the 1st of November 1971. So 6 years after our independence, we finally get sort of like our land and sea under our control, sovereign control. So this is rarely covered in our history books. So this one is actually the 1965 chart of Singapore. Okay. So see, this is the interesting shape. So the British are smart. Okay, this is the Sarimbun side. Sarimbun side, very small. This is the interesting side. Why W shape? Because down here is the Johor Shore. So the British smart. I don't want to take care of the shore. If something go aground, I have to be responsible, right? So I don't want. So I purposely draw my limit like that. All waters. So leaving out the shallow areas to no man's water. It's not no man's. So Singapore Port Harbour is from this line, and then like that. So this is literally no man's water, although technically it's in Singapore's territorial sea. But in terms of port, nobody wants to be interested in this. So they purposely draw this complicated line. So it's very difficult to trace this kind of line. So this is how it looks like, the Singapore waters. So on the modern map, it looks like that. So where we are here. We are here. We are here. So this is just outside. So fascinating. We are now actually sitting in these historical waters. So to close up here, Johor Shore. So shore prohibited anchorage, it says. Same thing. So we're here at Changi Navy Base. So now to come to 1975, the chart. This is actually bought from the National Archives. Fortunately, they have this chart collected, but this is the earliest. Okay, this one looks a little different, right? Got something on top of it because there's a grid superimposed. The contents are the same. So it was published in May 9, 1975. And that's just the date. So I found the documentation. It says the department published its first nautical chart on 9th of May. And I confirmed that the date is the first date, not the essay only. So this is the authority, the hydrographer himself. The hydrographer himself wrote this paper. And here's the asterisk. The asterisk is the title. Singapore Strait, Port of Singapore, encourages a navigational aids scale of 50,000. Okay, highlight this and just to take a look at the chart. And here you see the title, exactly the same. Singapore Strait, Port of Singapore, encourages a navigation aids, so 50,000. and not to be used for navigation. This particular chart is just for referencing use, not for navigation. And there were two flavors. One is just SP1, and the other one with the green grid superimposed. That's why you see something over the top. So this is for area referencing. So here, just to show the cartographic practice in the hydrographic chart. On land maps, the deeper the water, the darker the blue. On hydrographic chart, the deeper the water, the clearer the color is. So you see on the shore, green, yellow is land, green offshore, then darker blue, lighter blue, and then white. If you look at a land map, they will use dark blue, and then lighter blue, and then almost pale blue, and then land color. So that's the difference. If you look at a map of this color, if you don't know the origin, one is a land map, and the other one is a chart. But this is the insert, both the same. So here to show siren reefs from all this 1975 chart. And here, and area reference, that's the green thing, the grid on top. A previous hydrographer claimed that is his innovation. But 1953, there's already a chart with this same thing printed on it, Singapore Harbour Board's chart. So it's not to discredit him, because they also may not know that it's actually passed down from previous generations. The British already implemented it, because I found a German chart having this similar area reference scheme from the Library of Congress. World War II German chart, just found also. Because of this talk, I went around researching all these World War II things. So here is the area reference scheme. You see all these numbers here, all these superimposed over Tekong area, a new harbor. Okay, now finally, the last one, to mark SG60. These are the latest charts. The latest charts are actually there, the physical charts. So you look similar, but the colors have changed. This is now print on demand. See again, there's this, oops, too fast. Something is moving, it's the same grid thing. So the title is still the same, now Port of Singapore, changed already. And contours in meters, stress, very large print, meters, metric size. Since Singapore started metrication in 1970, the plan was the whole country would take 10 years to metricate everything. So different departments have their own schedule. So for land map in 1973, we have finished the metrication. So 1975, the first chart is also in metric. So the charts and maps people are quite fast in metricating. But here note that the scale is 65,000, shrunk a bit because of the Tuas reclamation. They have to shrink a bit to fit everything in. So same thing. There is a SP1, and then the gridded one, the green grid, which is this color, area referencing. And then, of course, this is the latest one, 2025 edition 9. Now they have this print on demand. So I purposely put in my request to buy the chart a few days before the 9th of May. Sorry, I used the word 5th, because 5th of May is Navy Day. So that's a good marker. Quickly send in my order and say, please print the chart on 9th of May. Of course, they don't print on the same day, but my order's receipt is 9th of May, which is the same day as the thing. You see, got so much heart. Yeah, the Chinese expression is this. I don't know the English word for it. So here, I actually want to say my own little bit of connection with this. When I joined Mapping Unit, it was 1996. At that time, we are going to this new system called WGS84. When you see this, it essentially at that time says it's compatible with GPS, because the model of the Earth is technical, but the model of the Earth changes. So this is the model of the Earth for GPS, native GPS use. So very, very important, because there's a lot of difference in the distance in the chart. If you use the old one and then you use it, you'll misinterpret, and very dangerous for navigation. So at the time, I was helping my boss in Mapping Unit to liaise with MPA. MPA was formed in 1996, the year I joined Mapping Unit. So yeah, it was MPA at the time. So I was liaising with the cartographers with PSA. I was the one talking to my boss, checking the parameters, using different software to check the conversion, whether it's correct or not. So that's my very, very short and very, very fast contribution to this charts. So again, we go back to the 1819 chart, the area of interest, the Singapore River area, Sentosa area, and then the Siren Reef over here. This is the latest chart, and then with the grid on top of it. So this is the 202 chart, just to show that, you see, Thomson anticipated this is the very important area, the 3 points. So his chart is covering the same area. So 202 chart is also over there, the latest edition, this one. Okay, finally, Coda, very fast. Because we only see the charts and all this, all are stylized. So this is the actual satellite image from the Landsat US satellite, 6th of July, 11:16 a.m. You can see all these dotted things over here, all these. If you can see it, never mind. Cannot see it, never mind. You can see it on the slide. The next slides you'll see. I pull out the contrast. You can see all these. These are all vessels, ships in Singapore waters. So many, somewhere out there. Yeah, this is the eastern side, this is the western side, this is the Tuas area. You see all these big, small, especially a lot of small ones in all this refinery area. All these small ones. Singapore water is very busy from the satellite. So, finally, may the winds be ever at your back and full sails. Thank you so much.